Today I'd like to talk about what I'm going to call describing the strike zone. You know, a struggle that lots of teachers have is communicating effectively your expectations for student behavior in the classroom. Posting a list is said to be oftentimes the panacea. And I'm not against posting a list of classroom rules. The problem is sometimes those lists aren't particularly clear. And oftentimes, especially older students, are going to want to argue and negotiate all these different particular things and what they're supposed to do. Let's talk first of all about even like the students talking in class. In 2023, it's unlikely that your class is going to be silent all the time, especially with our culture really encouraging young people to express their opinion. They do that, and they will do that. So in baseball, the strike zone is said to be somewhere around between the top of the shoulders and the bottom of the kneecap, and usually it's shown here in this picture. This is what umpires call the strike zone. But there is some gray area about what is a strike and what's not a strike, and it kind of depends on the umpire. Let me explain how this all works. So in my classes, we have some specific areas of the strike zone. The strike zone is appropriate student behavior in the class. A behavior that encourages the learning of everybody. And there are boundaries for that, like regarding talking in class and phone use and physical location and note-taking and work completion. So I'm going to go through this just like I would with my own class, the boundaries of the strike zone. And the students know that when they're in the strike zone, and they know when they're not in the strike zone. And if they're not sure, I let them know, well, you need to get back in the strike zone. So let's talk about talking in class first, the boundaries. So we need to talk about volume and purpose and when they should do that and how many involved. First of all, the volume. Talking in class is a perfectly appropriate thing to do if, like on the picture on the right, we have two people talking and they are close together and they hear their conversation but not everybody around them. Getting on your version of your megaphone is not appropriate volume. If the purpose of it is to helping students, as the picture on the right, about how to do a particular assignment or help understanding, that's very appropriate. Learning is a collaborative activity. If we're talking about secrets and spreading gossip, that's not appropriate. That would put you out of the strike zone. When should you talk in class? If you're working together, you're working through an assignment, that's perfectly appropriate to do that. If the teacher's giving direct instruction, no, that's out of the strike zone. How many involved? Look at a private conversation, 2 or 3 people maximum, fine. Groups of people, this is not a party, we're in our classroom, out of the strike zone. How about phone use? Now, some schools have school-wide policies. I've been in schools in which they're very effective of stopping student behavior with their phones. Other schools that I've worked in, they leave it up to each classroom teacher, and that becomes kind of chaotic. So let's assume for a second that your school doesn't have a strong policy enforced about phone use. What's the purpose, and when should you do it? What's the purpose? If we are working an assignment and we're using our phone to help with that, nothing wrong with that. If on the picture on the left, first of all, if you're hiding your phone, then that tells me that you're out of the strike zone. The purpose is wrong. If it's above board, we're fine. But if it's hidden, I have to question the purpose. When should you do it? Again, On the right, we're working on assignment work and collaboratively we're using our phone as a learning tool. Nothing wrong with that. They're part of our society. The phone is a tool. During direct instruction, and as you can even see in the picture, their messaging, not appropriate, out of the strike zone. How about the physical location, where to sit in class? Now, some teachers have their own rules on this. From my class, if especially high school kids, and some kids find desks uncomfortable, look at if you're going to sit on the floor and you're doing your work, I don't find that to be a particular problem. But we also would have kids who want to lay on the floor. Now, that's really not a good posture for doing your work. Again, physical location. Sitting at your desk, you're doing work on the right, fine. But again, sleeping, that's not really a choice that we can make in the class. I know high school kids, junior high kids, get tired, but we're not going to be able to sleep in class. How about note-taking? This is something that becomes very problematic. I chose the picture on the right because the person is using a pen to take notes. In my class, I encourage students to use blue ink to take notes. There is some research that seems to indicate that you remember better writing in blue ink, regardless of the color. The kinesthetic act of writing these notes out, you do remember it better. Using your phone to take notes. Kids always want to take pictures of stuff. Well, the problem is on their phone, they might have thousands and thousands of pictures. They're not apt to look back at those pictures. Plus, they don't remember it as well. Out of the strike zone. Work completion. Getting it all done, yes. During class, head down, playing on your phone on the left side, no, work completion's not done. It's much easier to keep up than to catch up. We need to work really hard. Being in the strike zone includes getting your work done. I really encourage you to know the strike zone. Having been a baseball coach in an earlier lifetime of mine, this idea of taking that pitch that's called strike three right down the middle, and you can say to the coach, it didn't look like a strike. Yes, but it was. Know the strike zone. Know what you're supposed to do. When should you talk? How should you sit? Is work getting done? I like this metaphor of the strike zone because it gives kids an area. Look at, everyone needs some control. It gives you some control, the students some control over their behavior. You don't need to, in my class anyway, you don't need to be silent. You can use your phone on occasion for some purposes. You can sit in certain spots during certain times of the class. You can have some freedom of choice with that. But there's also pretty clear boundaries. It also allows me to communicate with students easily, get in the strike zone. You're not in the strike zone. And once we get that language, it doesn't take then a long conversation. And just like when players will argue with the umpire, that wasn't a strike, doesn't matter what you think, you're out of the strike zone. Get in the strike zone. So we spend some time communicating this. Now, I may have some of this information on signs in the wall too, but I will use this slideshow presentation to teach the class, and we'll remind them, especially after breaks, like after a Thanksgiving break, after a winter break, if it's a year-long class, just to remind students this is the strike zone, to help you both have freedom of choice and function appropriately in the classroom.